Thank you, Mark, for sharing the Uno Square recipe for creating T-shaped engineers. Next, we're going to delve into the world of code reviews. Kira McArdle from Rakuten Blockchain Lab will explore the best and the worst of code reviews and how we can ensure that they add value to our development processes. Kira, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. You can hear me okay. So I'm Kira McArdle. I'm an application architect at the Blockchain Lab in Belfast here. And if I was to tell you that I started my career when I left Queen's, I started my career at Kainos. And at that point, Kainos was a company of 40 people. It probably gives you an indication of how long I've been a software engineer. Various roles through that time. I've worked in a lot of different companies. I've worked with a lot of different people. In a lot of great teams and had fun along the way. But you can imagine how many code reviews I've been involved in over that period of time. So I thought it'd be useful to kind of share with you today what I've learned about the code review, what makes a good code review, what makes a bad code review, and a downright ugly code review. So, okay, so we start with the good. Okay, so we must not lose sight of the fact that the overall objective of a code review is that the code coming out of a code review should be better than the code going into a code review. And that sounds obvious, but too many times I've seen code reviews be a sort of a tick box exercise in various companies that I've worked in. So it's really important that we don't lose sight of that. Now, better might look like a lot of different things. So number one way in which it can be better is that if you find bugs. So if you find bugs in a code review, that's a brilliant result because it's never made it into a build, it's never made it into a release, it's never made it into production. So it's much cheaper to fix that then. So that's a really good outcome for a code review, and that makes for a really good code review. Okay. Then the other way that the code might be better coming out of a code review is if it's cleaner code. So clean can mean a lot of different things. It might mean that your variables are better named. It might mean that it's simpler. It might mean that you've got better tests, or your code's more testable. So anything like this, where you can turn around and say, that code review was worth doing, then that's a good code review. You also get some unexpected consequences of doing a code review. So a code review should be an opportunity to pause and think, right? So sometimes we get kind of too embroiled in the code, but at the point of code review, step back and think, do we need this piece of code at all? Is it better done somewhere else in the system? And I think sometimes like the best code review could be where you realize we don't need to make this change at all. We don't need this piece of code at all. So you delete the piece of code, you get rid of it, and you've less stuff to look after. So good might look like a lot of different things in a code review. Code review should be a conversation, right? So we live in a post-pandemic world where conversations are hard to come by. People very rarely in the office together, having chats, working together kind of on an ongoing basis, face-to-face. So a code review should be a conversation, in my opinion, right? And the conversation should go something like this. Instead of being like, do this, do this, do this, and the person does all them things. That's not a conversation. A conversation is, I'm not sure if this is going to work when you've got a large data set. And the person comes back and says, all right, enough, and maybe I should try this. Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, okay, have you thought about this? So it should be a conversation backwards and forwards, right? And the really good thing about a good code review is the quality of the conversation that you get. So you can talk about software architecture all day long. You can talk about design patterns all day long. And that's a very shallow conversation when it's spoken about in a theoretical level. It's only when you have an actual live piece of code that's about to go to production, you can have a much deeper conversation about architecture, about design patterns, about all these things, right? I struggle to say the words cyclical complexity, right? In theory. But when you see it in a piece of code, you know what it looks like, and you know if you change your code to avoid that your code is simpler, easier to look after. So you can have a really deep conversation about code, and that's what the best code reviews are. When I started off doing code reviews, very hungry to learn, as you would be, right? So very hungry to learn from more experienced engineers, right? And I saw it as an opportunity, right? I can learn all the stuff that they know, and then I'll be as good an engineer as them. And that's still very important from a code review. So you can learn from more experienced engineers, and that's one of the real goals of a code review, and makes for a really good code review. But what I've also learned is that learning just doesn't happen one way. Okay, So what happens is, if I am reviewing somebody's code, that's an opportunity for me to learn as well. So the code's gone up there. It might be a part of the system that I don't work on a regular basis. So it's an opportunity for me to learn about different parts of the system and how they might work together with the part of the system that I am working on. So it's an opportunity to learn. Not only is it an opportunity to learn about other parts of the system, but it gives you an insight. It gives you an insight into how other people build code, other people's ideas. And that's really good. Because what happens is, you're looking at their code and thinking, that's really good. I'm going to use that in my code. Right? So it's a really good opportunity to learn. So a code review should be learning, not just for the person whose code is being reviewed, but for the person who's actually doing the review. And that's a really good code review. Too much of the time in code reviews, we point out the things that are, in inverted commas, wrong, that need changed. Right? Oh, maybe you should have a look at this. Have you thought that how's this going to perform when you've got a huge amount of data? Things like that. So we're too busy focusing on the things that are maybe not so good with the code or suggestions for change for the better. We very rarely call out what's good in a code review, right? And I think this is a mistake and definitely a lost opportunity. If you see good tests, say, I really like those tests. If you see code that's really well written and concise and simple, say, oh, I'm loving this. Right? And the reason that we want to do that is, first of all, well, standard reason is that everybody knows about the feedback sandwich. Okay, nobody likes to kind of get things, suggestions for improvement all the time. If you say good things, intermixed with bad things, then that's going to go down better and be better received. So that's number one reason. But that's not the main reason. If you think about your values as a software engineer, if you think about your values as a software team, the things that are important to you, and as an organization, the things that are important to you, is this testable code? Is this simple code? All these types of things. So those values that you want to become part of your culture, as a person, as a squad, as an organization, if you want those things to be part of your culture, then this is an opportunity to reinforce them. So you can turn around and say, I'm loving that. I'm loving the fact that you took out that hack and put in this really good code. And that's cementing your values as an organization. So that's why it's really important to say positive things as part of a code review. It's an opportunity to cement those values, and it should be used as such. So now we move on to what I think characterizes a bad code review. Okay, so some people like this, but I don't, right? So imagine that you've worked really hard on something. You're trying to solve a really complicated problem. You've thought about it for a long time. You've worked really hard on it. You've stayed up late. You've written a whole load of tests. By the time it gets to code review, you're a little bit tired. You're out of ideas. You're kind of just stuck, right? So when I put it up for code review, what I want to happen is I want to get feedback on that, because I want to make the code better. I'm kind of out of ideas and a little bit tired, but I want to make the code better. Put it up for code review, and you want feedback. And as soon as you get that feedback, suddenly your brain starts working again. Then you respond to the ideas that are in that response, and you start working again, and you start thinking, oh yeah, and you go again, and it kind of improves as a result of that. So it's about iteration as part of the code review. So I don't find this response particularly helpful. If it's a very small piece of code, that's fine. But I have seen big, massive chunks of code put up for code review, and there's the response people get, and I don't think that's a good code review. Okay, so one other characteristic of a really bad code review is a code review that takes ages, the interminable code review. And the way I've seen this happen on various teams is that everybody's working on their own little piece of the code and working very hard on it. Somebody on that squad puts their code up for review, and it sits there for a week before anybody looks at it, because people are too busy with their head down, right? But this, I think, is very anti-agile, right? Because you start off and you're thinking of the agile process. So you've got to do, in progress, review, and done, whatever done definition of done is. Okay, so the closest thing, as soon as somebody puts a piece of code up for review, it moves from in progress to review. So as a squad, the closest thing to done is now that code review. So your priorities as a squad should be to get that thing to done so that you build some value for the business. So to get that thing to done, somebody needs to look at the code review, right? So I think it's really important that it doesn't sit there for a week with nobody looking at it. Timeliness is really important when it comes to code reviews. The other thing is that for the person who's put their code up for review, if they're hanging around waiting, what are they going to do? They're going to go, if they're any sort of an employee at all, they're going to go and work on something else. That's a context switch, right? Their attention's gone away from that, and then a week later they come back and look at the code and they don't even remember what they did. Okay? The other thing is then when they come back on the code review, that's another context switch from the other piece of work that they worked on, so it's very inefficient. So, for a bad code review, it's a code review that goes on forever. It should be higher priority than that. So, when I started off doing code reviews, I used to put my comments there, and I kind of used to wait until they were all addressed to my satisfaction before I would click the approve button. And then one of the guys I work with at Rakuten that is part of my team at the minute, or we're in a team together at the minute, I saw his approach was a little bit different. So what happened was the code would go up for review, he would put all his comments on it, and he would click approve straight away. So I said to him, why are you clicking approve straight away? They haven't even had a chance of implementing any of your comments. He says, yeah, they haven't, but I would be happy enough for that code to go to production. So if you're happy enough for that code to go to production, press approve, right? You can still have the conversation about all the other suggestions for improvement that you might have put down, and it'll be a little bit backwards and forwards there. You can still have those conversations, but press the approve button, right? Okay? And then this is really good because the person then, first of all, it builds confidence in the person because they know it's good enough for production, but maybe it could be even better, right? And then that's a really nice, positive conversation that you're going to have after that about the suggestions for improvement. So this is something I think that characterizes a really good code review. There's only one thing I think falls in this category, and it's this, right? So I've seen this happen in multiple places, right? If your code review is an ego trip for someone, that's not what it should be. If it's used as a reason for somebody showing how smart they are, how experienced they are, that's not a reason to do a code review. Stop doing it. You're doing more harm than good. So either change your code reviews or stop doing them altogether because it's doing more harm than good. This is not what a code review should be. So when I distill all this down into kind of, okay, so we kind of looked at what I think characterizes a good code review and a bad code review. When I distill it down, this is what I think we come to. If you're a code review, you consider your code review to be part of your processes and tools. If you consider it a quality gate, if you consider it a tick box exercise that you must do, it will add some value. But if you consider your code review to be about conversations between your developers, about building capability, about building morale in your team, about building teamwork in your team, about exchange of ideas, knowledge sharing, all of these things. If you consider your code review to be part of individuals and interactions, you will get far more value from that. So that was my thoughts on the code review. I hope you found that useful.